discussion keeps the world turning.
This is Round Table.
You're listening to Roundtable. I'm Steve Hatherley. And coming up next, you've seen a fashion show, I'm sure. The runways of Paris and Milan with the world's most beautiful people adorned in the world's most beautiful clothing. Well, villagers in China have kept the runway, but they're replacing couture with cauliflower. Our podcast listeners can find us at Roundtable China on Apple Podcasts. Send your voice notes our way, too. You can do that by sending them to roundtablepodcast@qq.com. One more time, roundtablepodcast@qq.com. And now.
What are they going to say?
Hear ye, please gather round. It's time for the Soapbox.
It is time now for another edition of the Soapbox, and it's the time of the week where we find a story that's been going on in the news that had us feeling either positively or negatively about it. We share the story, we share our feelings, and then see if we agree or disagree. Yushan, you've got it today, and this is a really positive one, actually.
Yeah, so today I want to start with a story that genuinely made me smile when I first heard about the news. Just very recently, I think back in March this year. That's going on in Shitan village of Hengyang in central China's Hunan province, where something wonderful happened. It's so local in a way that you wouldn't imagine that they're getting this done, but they are. Right in front of the village community service center, the locals put together their own village tea fashion show, as in village tea stage fashion show. So when I say fashion show, I don't mean the kind that we usually imagine, the luxurious brands, the labels, professional models. There's nothing like that. No dramatic stage lighting, nothing. Instead, what they had was something far more charming that's just local, down-to-earth kind of fresh produce. They're literally wearing their fresh produce from the ground on them.
They're wearing the vegetables?
Yeah, sometimes it's cabbage, leeks, or carrots. I saw one just now with the lady holding the carrot that they just harvested with dirt on. So we're talking about more than 40 women from the village, ranging in age from just 9 years old to 73, that's stepped onto a temporary quote-unquote runway that's wearing creations made from the things they grow with their own hands. That includes red chili peppers that were strung into necklaces and fresh leeks becoming flowing capes. And then there's also canola flowers that were woven into bright headpieces. And then there's also celery, pumpkins, baskets of vegetables, even farming tools, all becoming part of the show. They're using it. They're literally holding it in their hand as a prop or as a way of demonstrating what they take pride in.
What a fun idea.
Yeah,
I've actually seen some of the videos on Douyin actually before, like some of them showcasing some of the oil that they produced from this fresh produce, or some of them holding rakes or shovels, literally the things you will use.
Not just the vegetables, not just the end product, but the beginning tools, if you will.
Yeah, previously I think this also was shot in other villages. Sometimes they lit a bonfire as a background, and men were also in the ones that I watched previously that were just carrying a heavy equipment that I can't even name. And then that one alone got over 20,000 likes. And underneath in the comment, people were saying, oh, I recognize that. That is blah, blah, blah. And it's super heavy. Uncle is so cool to be able to lift it up and walk over us with a big smile on his face. So somehow it's so incredibly moving when I saw it, because this wasn't fashion for fashion's sake. This was a celebration of harvest and of the village life that they're having, and in many ways a celebration of the people themselves.
Exactly. It reminds me of something else. Well, I think it's a trend going on in many villages in China, not only in this particular Shitan village in Hunan province. I've actually known somebody who is from Guizhou province, and they've been staging routinely, actually, probably on an annual basis or on a seasonal basis, that they travel around the world showcasing something very similar to this idea, not as a fashion show per se, but it's like demonstrating their culture, their lifestyle on a fashion platform, on a runway. I think some of them even went to New York or Milan or, around the world, and also traveling across the country as well.
Yeah, previously I interviewed, I think he is a Chinese artist who is dedicated to bringing some of our best traditional arts or intangible cultural heritage to the real fashion tea stages in Paris, in Milan. And he said a lot of the elements that he's been trying to kind of not transport, but demonstrate to the rest of the world comes from Guizhou. And I think this village tea label also comes from where you mentioned the Guizhou Kaili village tea. That's a brand now. Because in Kaili, villagers of all ages, from children to elders, and even in their 90s, they have been taking to the runway in clothing that showcase their own local embroidery, especially the Miao embroidery, the batik, the silver accessories, and other forms of local intangible cultural heritage too. And I think previously in one of the roundtable episodes, we talked about how local people, local artisans and small stores were able to kind of benefit from this kind of gathering, such as the village tea. For example, I remember there's one case where a silver shop owner, a lady, said how much she's earned during the peak travel season, because a lot of the visitors, after seeing the village tea demonstration, were willing to try putting on some silver decorations themselves or try to make some themselves. So that also brings in revenue for them.
So is the idea then, is that the main idea behind this? Because they are filming it and they are putting it on social media. So is the concept like, here's a fun thing that we're doing, going back to the vegetables, which is a really fun idea, by the way. Is the idea to kind of get the people who are watching those videos to go to a separate link where they can order vegetables or something like that? Or is this strictly done for fun?
I think it's both. For fun, I think definitely for the farmers themselves. You can put on a chili pepper necklace and walking down an aisle, walking down the runway to showcase your proudly produced. But also at the same time, I think in the example of that Hunan village, they're showcasing a lot of, for example, canola oil, which is one of their, I would imagine, their landmark produce from that village. And also when it comes to red chili peppers and then pumpkins are also something that they wish can, I think, is sort of a way to promote their produce, because the Guizhou village tea idea really helped promoting that Miao ethnic culture to a world stage. And why it's called tea, village tea? Because in Chinese, runway is called tea tai.
Okay.
So it's literally can meaning village runway. It's a runway for people from different villages across the country, even across the world, to showcase what they are proud of, just like a fashion worker, somebody working in fashion.
Yeah, I get it. And that can serve many different purposes because, it opens the door in a fun, lighthearted kind of way. And then if your end goal is financial and you want people to visit another link and order vegetables, that's cool. But if your end goal too is spreading the culture of where you're from, then it's just a very unique way to get involved. Because I think that to get that door open, especially to people outside of China, can be a challenge, right? Where are you supposed to go? What are you supposed to do? You can't make a video game, every time you want to promote something. You can't make a blockbuster film every time you want to promote something. So that can be a real challenge. So this is a really fun and creative way to do that.
Yeah, and also I think it brings us to the question of what really counts as fashion or art today under the modern, so diverse context that we're mentioning. Do you really think these village runways are reminding us that art, sometimes it doesn't have to come from elite spaces, that really ordinary people can also be some of the most original creators? Because really, it seems like just as simple as growing fresh produce and putting it together as a necklace or something, or a decoration. And it seems like it's just a sewing technique or an embroidery technique, but putting together that's really demonstrating a side of China, especially in rural China, that is probably sometimes, if I may say, underestimated, even for the Chinese people. We don't get to see them very often on the news and on everyday reports. We see the big improvements, the big steps, the humanoid robots playing martial art, but we don't really see how vegetables are proudly grown out and worn as part of a daily appreciation.
I was going to say the same thing. I think, never mind the world stage, this might be a national stage.
Yeah.
Where people who aren't from those rural communities, people from the tier 1 cities or tier 2 cities or whatever, maybe they would never have had an opportunity to learn about these people or how they live or what they produce or things like that. So an excellent opportunity for even people in China to learn.
Yeah, and reminds me when, for example, the Miao embroidery, which is kind of one of the biggest and most famous and has the longest history of embroidery in the Chinese cultures. Right. And I think the first time a couple of decades ago that Miao embroidery really became a part of the headlines over the news is because some of the international fashion brands said they drew inspiration from Miao cultures, and that's when people start to asking, oh, what is that? And then they check out the photos and say, Miao embroidery is really, really cool. And I think that got a lot of people thinking that shouldn't be the way that we get to know how Chinese culture, the histories and the techniques behind a lot of these Chinese cultures. Mm-hmm. It should be us finding these elements, in these villages, in the mountains ourselves. And I think that's why these sort of similar ideas when it comes to village teas from different places and regions, they want to showcase this kind of art in their original, most authentic stage. I think also as part of the Spring Festival Gala, they also put together really something similar to the village tea, which they have children of different ethnic groups in China walking down that stage with a singer singing in the background. And it was also a time and opportunity for a lot of people both here in China and also from outside of China to get to know, different costumes and different cultures of different ethnic groups within this country. And I think, when it comes to these traditional costumes, some of them start to lose their functionality in our daily life. When it comes, for example, the headpieces of the Miao people is very, very heavy.
Tough to commute on the subway with
yes,
that.
And how yes, exactly. How to pass that security check. But it's how do we get to know them in their most authentic, most beautiful, elaborated state? And I think this village runway, village tea idea is one of the ways for us to get to know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it brings the question, too, then, about fashion in general. Does everything have to be practical? If you look at some of those Paris runways, sometimes you see the models coming down the runway in something that is complete. You can't wear it. You can't. Yeah. Which is all. I've always watched those shows and thought, I don't get why. Because nobody. What is. I don't, right? That's kind of my reaction.
It must be some high fashion that we don't understand.
Right. But if we think about proudly showing the clothing that represents your people, then it doesn't have to be practical. I think not in every way. The Hanfu has been redesigned a little bit, right? I think we talked about that on Roundtable within the last couple of years about how they're trying to modernize it to make it into something that people can wear every single day. They're doing that in Korea, too, with their traditional clothing. And when I saw that in Korea and when I saw that in China, I thought, yes. And obviously, I'm looking from an outside point of view. But I kind of feel like it was messing with the original design a little bit, which is so beautiful and so stunning that to turn it into something modern, like a t-shirt or something, just doesn't, it takes away from it a little bit. So I love the fact that the headgear is the giant size that you can't wear on the subway or get through the security check, because that was designed without that in mind a long time ago.
Yeah, it's for certain celebrating.
Yeah, ceremonial.
Right.
Yeah.
Is for other purposes. But that also kind of, that's a very interesting point, because what we are doing is actually an effort to try to make the tradition, especially when it comes to clothing, last longer so that young people can get involved a bit more. And with the very, very complicated gears and clothing layers of hanfu, as you mentioned, in the traditional way, it comes in very heavy and perhaps sometimes very bulky too, that has very little place in fitting to modern lifestyle and pays, of course. But once under modification, that's where my standpoint will be made here. Once it's modified in order to, for young people or day-to-day office worker or whoever, to be able to wear it so conveniently and bring it out for whoever doesn't know this type of clothing to have a glimpse of what our culture carries in terms of clothing, I think that's a big step already.
Well, let's get to it then. A couple of different angles, I guess, we have to hear about the chili pepper necklaces and then the traditional clothing from rural villages in China. Are you ready for your soapbox?
Yeah.
Take it away.
What I admire so much about both of these stories is that their down-to-earth wisdom is really showcased through the village tea. There is something profoundly beautiful about people taking the most ordinary parts of daily life and transforming them into art. A chili pepper becomes jewelry, a leek becomes couture, a pumpkin becomes a runway prop, and suddenly what we normally see as everyday produce becomes a language of expression. To me, that is creativity in its purest form. It's something deeply human because it shows that art doesn't always need to be grand. Sometimes it's simply the ability to see beauty where others see routine. And these villagers see beauty in their labor. They're saying, our fields are beautiful, our harvest is beautiful, our traditions are beautiful, and we are beautiful. I think that's an incredibly powerful statement made, especially in the case of Guizhou, where the fashion show is also helping bringing intangible cultural heritage to a wider audience group. It reminds us that tradition stays alive not by sitting quietly in museums, but by being lived, by being worn, being performed, being intervened by the very people who inherited it. And maybe that's what I admire the most. These villagers may not call themselves artists, but I absolutely think they are, because innovation doesn't only happen in big cities, tech hubs, or famous fashion houses. Sometimes innovation looks like a grandmother turning vegetables into fashion. Sometimes creativity looks like a village turning harvest into celebration. And honestly, some of the most inspiring runways in the world may not be in Paris or Milan. Sometimes they're right there in the village square.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a great showcase, and it doesn't have to be anything more than what it is, which is a celebration of what they do on a daily basis.
And that reminds me of another saying got really popular in China. It's called, who are the most beautiful people in the world? The people who are doing the work.
Yeah.
Workers themselves.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt.
Excuse me.
Them and Brad Pitt. Well, maybe Brad Pitt 20 years ago. I don't know. Yeah, I know what you mean. I was just trying to think as we were chatting about, where I'm from and if we have any kind of special clothing that's ever been celebrated. And we don't really. Nova Scotia is a peninsula, so it's surrounded by water on three sides, kind of shaped like a rabbit's foot. And that means there's a lot of ocean culture there, fishing culture when you get really around the coast. A lot of the music the older music will be about stories from the ocean or stuff like that. So I think the most famous thing we have from Nova Scotia is called a sou'wester, and it's a old fishing cap, and it's bright yellow, and the front flips up, and then the back extends a little bit further. It's a rubber hat, and the back extends a little bit further so that your neck would be protected, I guess, if you're on the ocean.
Well, that's smart.
Yeah, I guess so. And I'm from Nova Scotia, so when I see that, I have no reaction to it whatsoever. People don't wear it. You don't wear it when you go like out in the rain or something like that. But it's just something you see in every tourist shop. Every souvenir shop. Nobody in Nova Scotia wears these things at all. But all the tourists come, when they come, they like, oh, a cute hat. And then sometimes they'll buy it and they'll take it with them as kind of a souvenir. But it's never been celebrated on a runway or anything like that. It's not worn, I don't think, in daily life. But it's kind of our thing, the Nova Scotia sou'wester.
So we need to spread the idea of village tea to Nova Scotia as well.
I think we're fine without that. I don't see this as being a necessary step for Nova Scotia.
We see one of those sou'westers turning up in the street corner of Beijing one day.
Maybe.
You never know.
You maybe you would, because like I said, and when you go to the tourist shops, you can buy like the little fake ones for display or whatever, but you can also buy like an actual one that you
A rubber hat?
that you could wear, if you were so inclined to do so.
Fei Fei looks interested.
Yeah, adding to my souvenir list.
Do you have anything like that from your hometown, Fei Fei, like traditional clothing that's been celebrated or anything like that?
In Mongolia, we have a ton.
I would think so.
Yeah, we have a ton of very similar to this Guizhou village tea idea. We don't really have a village tea as what people in Guizhou did, but we also have like different styles of Mongolian costumes, and when it comes to the boots that Mongolian people wear, and also when it comes to knives. Mongolian knives can also be one of the souvenirs a lot of tourists like to take away with them. And also we have different headpieces, and also when it comes, you can tell by what tribes of Mongolian that you are from just by different design of headpieces. So for those who don't really have an idea, the taller ones are the ones from the western part of Inner Mongolia, and for us in the eastern part of it, we don't have that kind of elaborated, really tall headpieces. So there are also different design for different tribes when it comes to the Mongolian group.
You live in Beijing now, and I guess you have for a long time. Do you have any traditional clothing at home that you put on sometimes?
We also have like modernized a lot of the designs, because when it comes to shirts, for example, we sometimes you can buy that in Inner Mongolia. We have a lot of like fashion brands that also are doing their own interpretation of what in the Mongolian costumes look like. So you can now buy shirts that's with elements like of traditional Mongolian costumes, because when it comes to the traditional costumes, they are very warm. So you can't wear them in summers in Beijing, for example. So they need to use like different materials, I imagine, when it comes to this redesign of what modern Mongolian clothing looks like.
That's cool. I love those boots too. Are they like a leather or suede kind of material?
You can buy leather ones, but there are also like cotton ones or silk ones. They're like different innovation, I would call it, when it comes to these modern Mongolian clothing now.
I guess the danger with these types of stories, not a danger, but sometimes they can be like a funny, cute thing that pops up in the news and then people forget about it. Right? And that's what we don't want to see.
But I would stand on the other side of it, is that it's a way for us to actually sort of incorporate the traditional clothing into modern life finally. Because the traditional ones are not really convenient for daily settings anymore. So having a way of finally having a Mongolian designed shirt that I can wear to my work on a daily basis is something I would celebrate.
Just don't wear a chili pepper necklace through customs at the airport. That may be confiscated from you. All right, well, that will do it for today's Roundtable. Thank you very much for being with us today. I'm Steve for Fei Fei and Yushan. We all thank you for being a part of the show. Enjoy your day, and please do come back and join us next time.